I remember it vividly, the exact moment my world began to slip away from me. I was in the kitchen, finishing up the last of the dinner dishes. The warm scent of rosemary and garlic still clung to the air. The house was still, filled only with the low hum of the fridge and the soft drip from the faucet. It had been one of those calm, forgettable evenings, until I happened to check the clock. 9:42 in the evening. Eliza was supposed to have been home long before that. I instinctively grabbed my phone, half expecting a message or maybe a missed call. But there was nothing. A quiet anxiety began to spread through my chest. I tried to push the feeling down. Maybe her phone had died, I reasoned. Maybe she lost track of time. Still, the silence around me felt off, like something wasn't quite right. I looked back through our text history. I had messaged her at 6:30, asking what time she thought she'd be home. It was still unread. Then again at 8:15. Everything okay? Also unread. By the time the clock ticked past 11:07, my concern had turned into a quiet panic. I was pacing back and forth in the living room, my pulse quickening. I tried calling her. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again, same result. My mind began retracing the steps of our last conversation. That afternoon, she'd said she had errands to run. That wasn't unusual. But something about the way she kissed me goodbye had stuck with me. It was rushed, unfocused. At the time, I brushed it off as her simply being in a hurry. But now? Now, I was starting to question everything. At exactly 12:26 in the morning, I called her once more. This time, it rang. And rang. Then, finally, a click. Eliza. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Where are you? There was a pause long, waited. Then her voice filtered through, quiet and cautious. Hey. I fell asleep at a friend's place. The silence that followed was deafening. A friend's place? That wasn't like her. She'd never stayed over somewhere without letting me know. My grip on the phone tightened. Eliza, it's after midnight. You couldn't have texted me? Another silence. Then a shaky exhale. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. But I could hear it. Her voice didn't sound right. After 7 years of marriage, I knew her well enough to recognize the tone she used when she was exhausted, nervous, or hiding something. And right then, she sounded like someone I didn't know. I swallowed hard, carefully choosing my next words. Just come home. A pause. Then a quiet okay. But something inside me remained unsettled. I didn't go to bed. I sat on the couch, staring at the front door, as if answers might walk through it. Every minute dragged, filled with thoughts spiraling into every worst-case possibility. Then, at 3:14 in the morning, I heard the lock turn. The door opened with a slow creak. Eliza walked in. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup slightly smeared. And just beneath her collar, almost hidden, was a faint reddish mark on her neck. It hadn't been there when she left earlier that day. Our eyes met, and for the first time, I saw something I'd never seen in her before. Fear. She realized, in that instant, that I knew. And in that same moment, something deep within me cracked. I rose from the couch slowly, my heart pounding, thoughts racing. I could have shouted, demanded to know everything. But I didn't. Instead, I walked past her, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. She spun around, her expression flashing with panic. Where are you going? I didn't respond. Because the truth was, I wasn't planning to return. I drove with no particular direction, no plan, only an urgent need to escape that house. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, and the sound of my heartbeat drowned out everything else. Eliza's face flashed in my mind. Wide eyes, lips slightly parted, that unmistakable mix of guilt and fear. She knew what she had done. And now, so did I. Eventually, I pulled into an empty gas station parking lot. I shut off the engine and let the silence settle around me like a heavy blanket. My phone sat on the passenger seat, untouched. I hadn't powered it down, but I also hadn't looked at it since leaving. I already knew what I'd find: calls, messages, attempts to explain, to plead. Words strung together in just the right way to keep me guessing, to keep me tethered. I clenched my jaw, fighting the lump forming in my throat. It wasn't only about what had happened in the last 24 hours. This moment had been a long time coming. It had been slowly building, through those unexplained late nights, the guarded way she handled her phone, the subtle shift in how she touched me. Love had morphed into something distant, something cold and measured. I had convinced myself it was a phase, that marriages had rough patches, that if I just stayed patient, we'd find our way back. But now, at 3:30 in the morning, sitting alone in my car, staring out at the desolate road ahead, I realized there was nothing left to hold on to. The truth has a way of revealing itself, even when you're not ready to see it. I took a deep breath and finally reached for my phone. One missed call, one voicemail, 3 texts, all from Eliza. Please come home. We need to talk. I swear it's not what you think. I can explain. The same script, the same empty words. A month ago, I might have believed them. Tonight, I didn't even think twice. I locked my phone screen and tossed it onto the passenger seat without hesitation. I wasn't driving home, and I wasn't ready to figure out where else I should be. Stepping out of the car, the cold night air wrapped around me, sharp and unforgiving. The gas station stood eerily quiet, its flickering neon lights casting dull glows over empty fuel pumps. I leaned against the hood, dragging a hand through my hair in frustration. I had always been someone who thrived on order, who planned ahead, who needed to know what was coming. But now, I felt adrift, physically, mentally, and emotionally. For years, I had poured myself into a life I thought I was building with Eliza. Only now did I realize that it had all been one-sided. And for the first time ever, I had no clue what to do next. Footsteps approached, unnoticed at first, until a voice broke the silence. A guy, likely in his early 20s, wearing a hoodie with his hands shoved deep into the pockets, stood a short distance away. "You all right, man?" he asked. I looked up slowly and gave a small nod after a pause. "Yeah, just a long night." He studied me for a second before giving a casual shrug. "Yeah, that happens to the best of us." As he turned to head back inside, he hesitated. "Whatever it is, don't let it eat you alive. Some stuff just ain't worth the wait." A humorless chuckle escaped me. "You have no idea." He gave a slight smirk. "Try me." And somehow, I started talking. Not everything, not the rawest details, but enough. Enough for a stranger to understand. He nodded, like someone who had seen it all before. "Yeah, man, I've seen it too. People think they can hide the truth forever. But it doesn't stay buried. It always comes out." He gave my shoulder a firm pat and walked back inside, leaving me alone with a truth I couldn't shake. Eliza had been hiding things for a long time, but the truth had finally surfaced. Now it was my turn to act. I pushed off the hood, climbed back into the car, and started the engine. I didn't have a home to return to anymore, so I figured I'd find a new place, one where she couldn't reach me. By the time morning light began to stretch across the horizon, I had put 100 miles behind me. Still, I couldn't call it home anymore. That place was just a structure filled with memories that now felt like poison running through my veins. I pulled into a shabby motel on the edge of an unfamiliar town. Its neon sign blinked inconsistently, humming in the soft stillness of early morning. It seemed fitting, worn out, tired, much like I felt inside. The front desk clerk didn't even glance up when I handed over my credit card. "One night or two?" he asked. I hesitated before answering. "Not sure yet." He nodded like he'd seen plenty of people in my shoes before. The motel room offered no comforts. Floral curtains faded by sunlight, a rough bedspread, and a television that gave off a low buzz when I switched it on. Still, for the moment, it was mine. I locked the door, tossed my bag onto a chair, and dropped onto the bed. Only then did I let the emotions rush in. The disbelief, the pain, the ridiculousness of everything. I had spent years thinking Eliza was my partner in every sense, the one person who stood by me. But that illusion crumbled with one night of ignored calls and a red mark she hadn't bothered to hide. I should have confronted her, demanded an explanation. But what good would that have done? It would have given her another chance to spin the truth, just enough to convince me to stay. I wasn't playing that game anymore. She had faded out of my life in her own way. Now, I was erasing myself from hers. Though my body ached with exhaustion, sleep wouldn't come. My mind kept cycling through the past year with painful clarity. Nights she came home later than usual, her sudden change in clothing choices, the way she'd subtly pull away when I reached for her. Maybe I had been blind. Or maybe I just hadn't wanted to see it. A buzzing from my phone dragged me from my thoughts. I didn't need to check the screen. I knew it was her. I let it ring until it stopped. Then came the messages. "Where are you? I woke up and you were gone. Please talk to me. We can fix this. I swear I didn't do anything wrong." I stared at the ceiling, phone face down in my hand. A year ago, those words might have swayed me. I might have convinced myself that I was overreacting. But this time, I saw things for what they were. This time, I wasn't going to be the one chasing after lies. She needed to know what it felt like to be left behind. Drawing in a long breath, I picked up my keys and stepped back outside. I didn't have a destination, just a conviction that I wasn't going back. The morning breeze carried the scent of rain, the pavement still damp from a storm I must have slept through. Sitting behind the wheel, I clutched it tightly while my eyes remained glued to my phone, as if the glowing screen held all the truths I'd been avoiding. More texts from Eliza had popped up. She had written things like, "I don't understand why you left. Please just talk to me. Where are you? I'm scared. Can you tell me what's going on?" That last message almost made me laugh bitterly. What's going on? She knew exactly what had pushed me away. Still, she played the innocent, pretending like she was clueless. It was almost impressive how effortlessly she turned herself into the victim, despite being the one who disappeared for an entire night without offering any explanation. I had poured so much into that relationship, my love, my trust, my endless patience. And in return, she gave me evasive words and long silences, leaving me to sit alone in our home while she did whatever it was she had done. I shut off my phone. I wouldn't give her what she wanted. Not answers. Not closure. None of it. Driving out of the motel parking lot, I let the open road stretch ahead, endless and uncertain. I didn't know where I was headed, but one thing was clear. I needed to keep moving, to put as much distance between me and that life as possible. As the scenery blurred past, memories of our marriage replayed in my head, this time with brutal clarity. The subtle changes, the way she began dressing differently, those increasingly frequent late nights at the office, and the hurried way she'd lock her phone when I walked in, suddenly stood out in sharp relief. I had brushed off those things, convincing myself I was just being paranoid, insecure. But now I just felt foolish. Eventually, I pulled into a small roadside diner. The smell of burnt coffee and greasy bacon hit me as soon as I walked in, comforting in a strange way. I needed something warm to eat, something grounding, to stop myself from coming completely undone. A waitress who looked like she'd seen her share of hard days, mid-40s, weary eyes, poured me a steaming cup of coffee before I even asked. "Rough morning?" she asked gently. I gave a dry laugh. Something like that. She didn't press. Maybe she could read it on my face, or maybe she'd seen enough men stumble in, worn down by life, to recognize the signs without needing an explanation. I nudged my phone to the far end of the table, resisting the urge to look. I was sure Eliza had sent more messages, maybe even tried to call, but I wasn't ready to hear her voice. Not yet. Instead, I let my thoughts drift to what I'd do next. I couldn't drive endlessly, avoiding everything forever. Sooner or later, I'd have to make a decision, and something told me Eliza wasn't going to like what that looked like. The road ahead unfurled like an old wound, raw and exposed. I didn't have a map or a set plan, just an aching need to escape the wreckage I had left behind. With each mile that passed, the pressure inside me eased a little, though the quiet in my mind only grew louder. I wasn't just driving, I was fleeing. But no matter how far I went, pieces of my past clung to me like shadows, refusing to let go. Eventually, fatigue took over, and I pulled into another budget motel off the highway. The place looked like it hadn't seen maintenance in decades. Its neon sign blinked erratically, buzzing like it was on its last breath. I paid in cash, avoiding the eyes of the desk clerk who barely acknowledged my presence. The room was musty and smelled like a mix of cheap disinfectant and old smoke. The bedding was a colorless brown, likely chosen to hide years of wear and grime. But comfort wasn't what I was after. Nothing felt like home anymore. I sank onto the bed, eyes fixed on my phone. I had promised myself I wouldn't check it, but some stubborn part of me needed to know. With a sigh, I unlocked the screen. Eliza had called me 11 times. Her messages had morphed, starting out desperate, then confused, and finally, angry. "You don't get to vanish, Eli. We're married. This is childish. Just talk to me and I'll explain. I deserve at least that. Fine. If you want to act like this, go ahead. But you'll regret it." That last message made me let out a hollow laugh. Regret? My only regret was not walking away sooner. I tossed the phone aside and let myself fall back onto the bed, body heavy with exhaustion. But sleep didn't come. My thoughts unraveled everything I had ignored for far too long. Looking back, the signs had always been there. The excuses she gave for coming home late. The secretive way she handled her phone. The growing distance between us. The way intimacy had faded, replaced by distant politeness and rehearsed apologies. It hadn't just started recently. This had been building for months, maybe even years. Still, I had stayed. I had clung to the belief that love was supposed to weather the storms, that marriage meant holding on through the rough seasons. I had told myself she was just overwhelmed, just tired, just preoccupied. People don't just vanish for an entire day and then return with vague, half-hearted explanations unless they're hiding something. That thought lingered heavily in my mind until a sudden knock at the door pulled me out of my spiral. My heart jumped, my body reacting before I had time to process. No one was supposed to know I was here. I moved cautiously, my breath held tight in my chest as I stood. The knock came again, this time quieter, almost hesitant. I edged toward the door, eyes narrowing as I peered through the peephole, my hand clenched around the doorknob like it was the only thing anchoring me. The woman outside wasn't Eliza. She appeared to be in her early 20s, dark hair haphazardly tied back, a jittery tension clinging to her like a shadow. Her fingers twisted the hem of her oversized sweater as she shifted nervously. I hesitated but eventually opened the door just a crack. "Can I help you?" I asked, unsure and guarded. She let out a relieved breath. Thank goodness. I was starting to think I had the wrong place. I furrowed my brow. "I think you do." She bit her lip, eyes darting around the hallway before leaning in and lowering her voice. "You're running, aren't you?" The words struck me like ice. My posture stiffened. "I'm sorry." "What?" Her smile wasn't warm, it was knowing. Like she understood something others didn't. "People don't end up at motels like this unless they're trying to disappear," she said, her tone matter-of-fact. I blinked at her, unable to form a response. She stepped back, her voice softening. "Room 112. In case you decide you want to talk." With that, she turned and walked away. I quickly closed the door and locked it twice, stepping back as my heart pounded. An uneasy sensation crept over me. Who was she? More importantly, how did she know anything about me? I didn't know if I was ready to find out, but something told me I wouldn't have the luxury of choice. Sleep was out of reach. I tried. I needed it desperately. But every time I shut my eyes, the memory of that knock returned. Her face, her words, that eerie certainty in her voice. "You're running, aren't you?" It was like she had seen right through me, like my entire situation was something she recognized. When the first pale light of morning crept through the thin curtains, I had made up my mind. I needed to confront her. She had awakened a question in me I hadn't even realized was there. I walked to her door and knocked twice, the sound oddly loud in the still morning. For a moment, I wondered if she had already left, or if I'd simply imagined the encounter in a haze of exhaustion. Then the door eased open. She stood there, sleepy-eyed, her hair now loosely falling over one shoulder. She wore the same oversized sweater, her face unreadable, like she had been waiting for me all along. "You lasted longer than most," she said in a quiet voice, stepping aside to let me in. Her room was nearly identical to mine, bare walls, bargain furniture, and that strong, sterile scent of bleach mixed with musty air. The bed was unmade. A half-drained whiskey bottle sat on the nightstand. I stepped inside and shut the door. "Who are you?" She sank down onto the bed, stretching like someone who had nowhere to be. "That depends. Who do you need me to be?" I wasn't in the mood for vague answers. "How did you know?" She gave me a slow, amused glance. "That you're running?" She ran a hand through her hair and let out a breath. "Because you look like you've seen a ghost. Because you checked in late, paid with cash, and haven't used your phone once." Her words made me tense. Had she been observing me this whole time? She seemed to notice the shift in my demeanor and raised a hand calmly. "Relax. I don't know your full story, but I recognize the signs. I've been there. I've lived that." I narrowed my eyes. "So you just go around finding people who look like they've hit rock bottom?" "Sometimes," she admitted with a shrug. "It's how I got by for a while." Exhausted, I rubbed my face, trying to collect myself. "I didn't come here for riddles. I just want to know why you showed up at my door last night. Why you even cared." Something subtle changed in her expression. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees, her voice lower now. "Because nobody truly wants to vanish, Eli." The sound of my name hit me hard. I hadn't told her that. The realization must have shown on my face because she smirked faintly. "Your wife's not the only one who knows how to dig around online. You weren't exactly hard to find." A cold fear twisted through me. "What exactly are you saying?" She rolled her eyes slightly. "I'm saying you left in a hurry, but not carefully. People don't just drop off the grid without leaving digital breadcrumbs. If I could find you this fast, someone else will too." My throat went dry. "Are you telling me she's already looking?" "Not yet," she said as she stood. "But it's only a matter of time. And if you want to stay hidden, you'll need to do a whole lot better than this." My pulse thundered in my ears. "Why are you helping me?" For the first time, her playful expression faded, replaced with something genuine. "Because I've been in your shoes. And believe me, you don't want to repeat my mistakes." She reached into the drawer beside the bed and pulled out a small, cheap phone. She tossed it over to me. First step? Get rid of yours. I stared at the phone in my hand, my grip instinctively tightening. I had already left, already vanished from the life I once knew. But deep down, I wondered if I was truly done running. The burner phone felt almost weightless in my palm, its cheap plastic shell a clear reminder of its temporary nature. These phones were made for people like me, those trying to disappear without leaving a trace. Looking up, I met the eyes of the woman standing before me, quietly waiting for my next move. "You haven't told me your name," I said. Her lips curled into a knowing smile. "That's because it doesn't matter." The way she said it sent a cold wave down my spine. It wasn't just about helping me vanish. She had lived this before. She had walked away from her past, cut the ties, and rebuilt herself after everything had tried to tear her down. I drew in a long breath, my fingers curling around my phone once more. Then, silently, I unlocked it and opened Eliza's messages. She had written again. "Eli, I don't understand. Can we talk? Please, I miss you. Don't do this." My jaw tightened. For years, I had poured everything into that relationship. My heart, my trust, my future. And now? She was slipping back into old habits, twisting the truth, portraying herself as the one hurt. I could have replied. I could have pushed for answers, demanded the truth about the night she disappeared. But I already knew how it would go. She'd lie, craft a tale that felt just real enough to stall me. And if I hesitated, she'd win. I wouldn't let her have that power again. With a final glance at the messages, I shut off the phone. The screen faded to black, just like the chapter of my life I was leaving behind. I handed the device to the woman beside me. Her eyes glimmered with something like approval. "Good. Now we can begin." I hesitated. "Begin what?" She swung her bag over her shoulder and stepped toward the door. "Making sure you don't end up exactly where you started." We stepped outside into the early morning. The air was sharp and fresh, biting at my skin. Everything felt altered now, emptier, perhaps, but also strangely liberating. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't waiting for a reason. I wasn't clinging to an apology that would never arrive. I had stopped waiting. She moved ahead, her steps deliberate. "Come on, Eli. You're not the first man to lose himself over someone." I let out a short, breathless laugh, shaking my head. "And you think it's just that easy? That I can walk away and start over?" She paused, turning to look me in the eye. "You already have. The moment you walked out that door, you became someone new." Her words struck something deep in me. She was right. Eliza would wake up expecting to see me there, ready for another round of manipulation. But she wouldn't find me because I was already gone. And this time, I wasn't turning around. By the time we reached the parking lot, the sun had fully risen. My car sat untouched, coated in a fine layer of dust, like a time capsule from a life I no longer claimed. The woman leaned against the hood of her own vehicle, studying me with a quiet sort of understanding. She had clearly seen men like me before. "So, what now?" I asked, my voice calmer than I had expected. "That depends on you," she replied simply. "You can keep running, looking over your shoulder, or you can move on." "Move on," I repeated with a hollow laugh. "From what, exactly?" She raised an eyebrow. "From the version of yourself that spent years loving someone who never deserved it." Her words hit me hard. I had spent so long trying to fix something broken, convinced that love meant enduring, that enough patience would mend what was cracked. But love wasn't supposed to be a battle. It wasn't supposed to be something you begged for. I stared at my hands. And how do I even begin to do that? A soft smile crossed her face. "You start small." She reached into her jacket and handed me a folded piece of paper. Gently, she placed it in my palm, then stepped back. "This is where I'm headed. If you ever feel ready to figure out what's next, you'll know where to find me." I unfolded the paper. A city. A coffee shop. A time. I glanced up, but she was already climbing into her car. "Wait." I called after her. "Your name, what is it?" She smiled again. "Call me anything you want. Just don't call me someone who looks back." With that, her car pulled away, leaving behind a faint trail of dust and countless questions. I stood there for a while, the note still in my hand. I could get into my car and vanish completely, become a shadow in a world that would never notice I was gone. But something shifted in me. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't want to keep running. I wanted to live. And maybe, just maybe, that journey would begin with a cup of coffee in a city I'd never seen, shared with a stranger who knew what it meant to start again. A quiet smile tugged at the corners of my lips as I slid into my car and turned the key. I had stopped running. At last, I felt truly free.